Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. The Man on the Trail with the Empty Stroller by Tree Guts. My fiancé and I love hiking. We've had some strange moments on trails before, but nothing like what happened a few weeks ago. We went for a short hike at a state park we've been to dozens of times, and since it was just a quick trip before dinner, we didn't pack our usual things. No knives, no pepper spray. I even said, it'll be fine, we've done this one plenty of times. The first half was normal. The air was calm, the woods were quiet. Then we came around a bend and saw a woman standing off to the side, crying softly. Not loud or dramatic, just quietly, like she wasn't even aware anyone else was there. A few feet ahead of her was a man with his back turned, pushing a stroller down a rocky trail where a stroller made absolutely no sense. We kept walking, trying not to stare, and about 5 minutes later we decided to turn back because we were starving. On our way back, we saw the man again still pushing the stroller, and I glanced inside it out of curiosity. It was empty. No baby, no blanket, just an empty stroller being shoved through the woods. Without thinking, I whispered to my fiancé, "There's no fucking baby in there." I thought we were far away enough that he wouldn't hear me, but we weren't. My fiancé looked over his shoulder a moment later and said quietly, "He's staring at us." I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I could feel it, the weight of his stare. Then came the sounds of footsteps behind us, picking up speed. He was following us. We started walking faster, and he sped up too. And every time we looked back, he was still there. Not close enough to reach us, but always visible. Always watching. We passed the crying woman again, and she didn't even look up. The stroller was gone now, and the man in his blue hoodie was walking quickly behind us. And that's when we ran. My chest was tight and I could barely breathe, but every time I glanced back, I saw flashes of blue moving through the trees. The trail had sharp turns, and each time we rounded one, we'd lose sight of him for a second. But then he would be there, again, still walking, still following. Finally, after what felt like forever, we caught up with another group of hikers. And as soon as we did, the guy was gone, vanished into the woods. We sprinted to the parking lot, jumped in our car, and tore out of there. The whole drive home, I kept second-guessing myself. And what if there really was a baby? What if he just wanted to confront us? Deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong. I haven't gone back to that entrance since, and sometimes I hike from different parts of the park, but lately I've noticed baby clothes scattered along the trails. Little socks, a onesie, and every time I see them, that same cold feeling crawls up my spine. The Room, submitted by ChonkyBoy91. I don't care if people believe me or not. Believe what you will. This happened over 10 years ago. I never had the best relationship with my dad, so when it came to having me move in with him, I was dreading it. To make matters worse, my sister, we'll call her Jane, gave me a heads up about the room I was going to stay in. I will add here it was an old Victorian house with high ceilings. Jane had always been closer to my dad than I ever was, so she had stayed with him while I stayed with my mom. She told me during her stay a few weird things happened to her, but there was one notably unsettling story. Jane was sitting downstairs with the dog when all of a sudden the CD player turned on upstairs in her room. She didn't think much of it and went up and turned it off, but upon coming down the stairs, the dog was snarling and backing away from the seat next to where she had been sitting. Jane calmed the dog down and reassured it, and just as the dog settled, the CD player turned on again. This time she ran up there, turned it off, and unplugged it from the wall. Understandably, she was anxious and unsettled at that point and called her friend to see if she could go over there, when all of a sudden, the CD player turned on full blast. She ran out of the house with the dog and then proceeded to stay with her friend for a while after that. Obviously, with that knowledge, I was not particularly thrilled about my new accommodation, but there wasn't a lot I could do as I was still relatively young. When I moved in, the relationship with my dad went straight to the way it always had: physical and verbal abuse, and I just generally tried to avoid him, which meant I ended up in that room a lot. Some small things that happened were cupboard doors opening by themselves, and light bulbs falling from their sockets and smashing on my head, and things just generally moving from place to place from where I'd put them. I even watched a door handle turn and a door open all by itself. But the time that got me was one time I was sitting playing games in my room, and there was a loud bang. I got up to check, and at the same time my dad from downstairs came up to investigate. The attic hatch had swung open and hit the wall and put a big dent into the wall. Naturally, my dad went crazy on me, despite me trying to explain that the hatch was over 7 feet high. I'm only 5'5", and when it happened, I was in my room. The next day, I climbed up on the banister and pushed the hatch up and let it swing down. After all, the wall was already dented. I wanted to understand what had happened, as there is no way it just fell open. And upon doing it, it didn't hit the wall that hard at all. That freaked me out. After that, I was always scared going under the attic, until one day I was home alone brushing my teeth in the bathroom. The attic hatch was in between the room I stayed in and the bathroom. While I was in the bathroom, I literally watched the hatch swing open and smash the wall again. I literally just booked it. I think I must have missed half the stairs running down, and I left the house. After that, I ended up staying elsewhere and never went back to that house. Unfortunately, it seemed for a few years wherever I went, some things would happen. But eventually, it all settled, and there hasn't been any spooky stuff for a couple of years now. The Demon That Tormented Me by Interesting Dish. And trigger warning. Topic of suicide and mention of self-harm and sexual assault. Long story. Do you believe in the paranormal? Since I was a kid, the unknown has always fascinated me, even though I was being tormented by something at the same time. I want to tell my story chronologically so you can see how it grows. A little backstory. When I was 7 or 8, I tripped on a cord and busted my forehead open. I had to get it stitched up at the hospital, so most of my early years I vaguely remember, and I'll do my best to keep it straight. Ever since I can remember, I've always had nightmares, but a specific nightmare to be exact. It was a disturbing nightmare about being sexually exploited. Sometimes I was her and it was happening at my parents' house, but sometimes it was someone else and I was just living through her. One of those dreams or nightmares that I can still remember to this day it wasn't me, but I was someone 9 or 10 with a pink shirt on and capri blue jeans with Converse shoes, sitting outside in the sun on concrete steps to a red brick building. Somehow I knew I didn't want to be there, but I was being forced to, and I knew I had to do actions that felt dirty and disgusting and left a burning hole deep in my gut. In the nightmare, I would be waiting in the beaming sun and see a tall guy coming upstairs and stopping by me to stand over me. I didn't want to look up at his face, and all I saw was that he was just this skinny guy with straight-edge blue jean pants and black and white Vans. The classic slip-on ones. He then started walking into the building, and the fire in my gut grew, knowing what was about to happen. I would quickly wake up from the nightmare as soon as I walked into the building. I wanted to go back and save her, but I didn't know what to do or how to react. I do know that I started to dread going to sleep. It just felt like one time I would never wake up again, and I would be trapped there, no way of giving myself control. Other times I would have nightmares of people trying to kidnap me, and running in a dream while in fear of being kidnapped is just so wrong. I mean, like, why? That shit was ass. But then, somehow things got worse. My dad would start to travel for work, and me and my siblings would sleep with my mom to comfort her. I was probably 10 or 11, and again, I never wanted to fall asleep, in fear of having a bad nightmare, or eventually never waking up and being lost in the dream world. And suddenly, one night, I got flashes of an axe going against my own mom in my head while lying next to her. I just sat there and thought, what the hell was that kind of feeling, clinging to my mom sleeping next to me. She moved away, and she's just not the kind of person that likes to be touched while sleeping. I also thought that if I could just touch her, feel her, that she was still right next to me, that I would fall into that dream world. I was so scared, I didn't know what to do, or how to tell my mom, hey, I just had flashes of chopping up your body in my head, and I'm scared, without scaring her, or sounding crazy. I brushed it off as much as I could, but every night was a struggle to not fall asleep. At that point, that's when things started to fly off shelves, and there were loud bangs and random voices, all of them becoming more prevalent during the day. I remember some nights I could hear a whole party going on outside of my bedroom, and I would walk out like, who the fuck is here? Not a soul would be in the living room or the kitchen. Most nights I would hear like multiple people or some entity's feet shuffling right over me. I would always feel like there were 2 or 3 people watching me sleep and moving around a lot, to the point where I stopped being afraid and just irritated by them. The shuffling got so loud eventually that I couldn't sleep until it stopped. And one time I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a shadow figure indeed watching me sleep. Another time I saw a group, and one closest to me was wearing a hat. There were about 10 regular dark human-like figures standing behind him, kind of spread out in the room. I would again just see the regular black shadows randomly, and it kind of got into my head, and I thought they were there to tell me what to do telepathically. But after a while, I stopped seeing them. It started to become a joke that everyone was noticing random noises happening, and my mom, being a big Christian, didn't like that we thought there was a ghost in the house. But me and my brother and sister could feel something was there. As a kid, I loved to play imaginary teacher, and I would set up my stuffed animals and give them grades and tests, put them into timeout, take them on to recess, and sometimes teach them what I had just learned at school. My sister and I shared the same bedroom till we were almost graduating high school, and at first she liked playing with me, but then she grew out of it. Soon I couldn't play in my own room when she was in there, so I would teach in the kitchen or the living room, but most of the time I just moved to my parents' room. My parents' room is where things started to get worse. After a moment of me starting to teach my class, I would feel something watching me, and then the feeling would move more towards hatred, like whatever it was watching me, it wanted me dead or suffering. There were some days that I couldn't be in there too long, or be in a happy mood for too long, because it would come out and watch me, and then just kind of push hate on me. I remember one time I knew it was in the corner of my dad's side of the bed, and I looked right at it, feeling it look back at me with that hate. I imagined it was a dark black cloud with energy flowing through it, and I felt that it was a man, like how you can just feel someone's intentions. That sixth sense was telling me it was a man. Soon I just stopped teaching because I had no safe space left to let my imagination run wild. Every time I saw him, I just felt that he hated me, and it was like a deep, strong hate. Hating an 11-year-old trying to play imaginary teaching is just wrong. I started to get upset that it was happening. It's not like I did anything to the man, not like I killed him. I had nothing to do with whatever was going on with him, but it was almost like he targeted me to suffer along with his hate. At a young age, and while all this was going on every day, I became really suicidal, and I would choke myself till I was about to pass out. I'd tie a belt to the closet coat rack and then the other end around my neck and lift my legs off the ground. In 6th grade, that's when I began to self-harm. And around high school is when my self-harming got out of hand, and I was taking way too many sleeping pills in hopes that maybe I took too much. My mental state was on thin ice is all that I'm saying, and all that at such a young age. Another incident was when I was sleeping on the floor, and somehow I was sleeping on the floor halfway in my parents' closet. My mom would just put all of our laundry in this big pile because we didn't have room in the rest of the closets, and hers was a really small one. But I remember laying on the floor in my parents' room next to a pile of clothes, putting my feet under their bed. I was half asleep, half awake, hearing my mom and sister getting ready for something, so they were coming and going out of the room. Suddenly I felt this slimy or just wet, sweaty, long hand with long fingernails grab my foot, trying to pull me more under the bed. I jolted up and screamed, "Who just grabbed my foot?" And my mom and sister came running into the room, saying it wasn't them. I didn't know what to do, but like everything else, I just tried to forget it and act like it didn't happen. Then, one time my grandma came over from California, and frantically she asked my mom, "Why didn't you tell me you invited that man here?" And my mom replied, "What man? There's no one here but us." And she said, "I saw a man sitting in your husband's chair." She later described him as looking really angry and mean. That reassured me that what I was feeling was real. I eventually opened up about my nightmares to my mom, and she told me to put a holy Bible under my pillow. And so I did, and it helped out for a while. Surprisingly, everything stopped. I would still get nightmares now and then, but they just weren't as frequent. Soon I would do the same when I would go out of my bedroom at night. I would feel him watching me, and I would recite scripture and eternally reject his energy. As soon as I would speak those words, he would vanish, and I was actually feeling alone. Throughout my childhood, I was very suicidal sometimes, and I would hurt myself into hatred. I just felt like I was a monster. I could never prove it, but I believed that man was tormenting me and putting thoughts into my head, flashing dark images to me to corrupt me into ending my life, whether it be physically or mentally. And I picked myself up through failed attempts with psych wards and therapy. I realized that only I could make a change in my life and force out those repetitive dark thoughts. Time passed, and I was feeling better. There were endless nights of smoking Mary Jane and talking to myself, analyzing my mind. I hadn't had any interactions with that man in years, although I felt that dark presence at my last apartment. I heard stories of demons attaching to people and following them. I hope that's not my case. But that last connection. I was getting ready for something, I can't remember. But I do know I was 17 or 18. I was still living with my parents. I was getting ready in the back bathroom, and my mom was getting ready up in the front bathroom. When suddenly, and I don't know why the fuck this happened to me, but I heard a deep male voice right next to me, on my right side, speak my name, Alyssa, bold and clear as day. I turned my head slowly to the right in shock and looked at the shower, and seeing this energy flow, like how heat gives off a mirage. And 4 seconds later, my mom called my name, and the mirage thing disappeared. That scared the shit out of me. I got out of the bathroom so quickly, and I felt like I had to just brush it all off and repeat the cycle of trying not to let it bother me again. I think he has been following me, just waiting. I'm 24 now, and I can't get over the core memories of harming myself, and I won't forget the horrid feelings that I felt. I can never forget the nightmares. I mean, everything seemed like torture and fear every night. I do think it might have been a demon instead of some guy who passed away and was just pissed off. I try not to give it thought or gender to give power, but I'm imprinted by it. I get flashbacks, bursts of the same feelings that I felt, and panic attacks too. I'm affected by it. I don't tell a lot of people or close ones unless they bring up similar events happening to them. Otherwise, I can tell that they don't understand the power that's at play. I mean, they are a trick. They will mentally and physically mess with you. So everyone, please be careful with the dead and darkness, and have an open mind for people that experience it. Weird Things in Northeastern Alabama by Finch's Song. We're located sort of near the Appalachian Mountains, and I've witnessed something weird recently. To give some perspective, I live on 467 acres in northeastern Alabama. Where I live, we have very few neighbors, one of which is my grandparents, who have owned the land since the early 80s. We live inside of a hollow with tall mountains surrounding us on all sides. And recently, someone bought one of the mountains and have converted it into an ATV park, which is pushing lots of wildlife down onto our land. Deer, coyotes, etc. On November 1st, my siblings went to ride on the Polaris Ranger. It was close to 10:30 when they began making the loop of the property, and there's a bridge over a creek right at the start of the road that they followed. It's basically the beacon of being home. They rode in loops of the property from 10:30 till about 10:45 or 11, and then began feeling off. I just had a sinking feeling of dread. The eldest of them felt it first, but didn't say anything and continued making the loop with the younger two. After making the loop a few times again, they spotted something on the ground and stopped to look. And this is when the second oldest began feeling a sinking feeling as well, but didn't voice it. As that older man said, "Don't stop, just keep driving, we'll look at the ground in the morning." And then they just continued making the loop. At about 11:15, they paused again to stop and read a text from our mother. When they were stopped, the middle one looked out across the field and saw a large creature, almost 6 foot tall with 4 legs, but it appeared to be standing up like a human across the field. He said he locked eyes with it, and then he just floored it, and they all began coming home, once again not voicing that they were scared. But by the time they got to the bridge, the youngest had begun crying and begging to get home. There's a gate leading onto the property that must be open and closed to come and go, so the oldest got out to open the gate and said that she felt that if she looked up, she wouldn't survive what she'd see. Anyway, they floored it and made it home fine. Now for more details. We have a porch dog that typically follows people when they go, but for some reason he stayed home that night and didn't follow them when they went out to ride on the loop. There are also cattle out on the land, but when they were out riding, they didn't see any of the cattle nor see any sign of any life. It was just them, the smell of smoke, and the wind. And while driving, they had been playing music. And just before all of this occurred, the Pumped Up Kicks began playing, which had whistling in it. When they were coming home, they described it as feeling as if they were prey and being hunted. That something, whatever it was right there with them, and if they'd stopped or turned around, they'd never make it back. When they came back, their pupils were all blown so wide you couldn't see the color in their eyes anymore. Since this happened, we've returned to that area, and nothing seems to be amiss. I say all this to ask, what could have caused that strange feeling in all of them? What do you think happened? Did they see a cryptid of sorts? I think I almost died on some paranormal property by Remote Sheep Herder. This was almost 2 years ago now. I had a new job doing lawn care with an old friend, and basically we'd spot spray for weeds, dump fertilizer, and operate vehicles to aerate and spread seed for the grass. Boring stuff. This was mostly for well-to-do people. Big houses, lots of land. But there was one place that felt off. I couldn't put my finger on why. It was just a strange, eerie feeling. It was a really hilly area, big enough to have a tennis court hiding away in the back like it was some afterthought. I was new to the vehicles we had to use, but I always sped through every area sloppily, just trying to get the job done quickly. And this place had a hill so steep that I capsized my aerator trying to make it over it, and it fell forward miraculously, and I got bucked off like I'd been riding a bull. If I had fallen backwards, which was just as likely if not more so, I'd have been dead or at least paralyzed from the waist down. I remember having this adrenaline rush, propping the thing back up, and then looking around to see if anyone else had seen me. Somehow, no one had. But I continued on like nothing happened, a little shaken up but relieved. I didn't think much of it until months later, when I returned to the same property. It took me a few moments, but I remembered the area and felt really uneasy once we parked our 2 trucks. When we opened up the first, chemicals from our weed killer backpacks gushed out of the back and onto the driveway, making a huge puddle. My boss was understandably irritated, assuming someone had left one on, causing the spill. But when we checked the backpacks, all 3 of them were on. It was strange, but we chalked it up to thoughtlessness. So then we opened up the second truck. 3 more backpacks, all switched on with a blue light. I remember telling my boss that every single pack was on, and him just looking confused, saying, "Well, that's no good." We had 4 people on the job, and 6 backpacks turned on. There's just no way that goes unnoticed, especially by the boss, who was a stickler for that sort of thing. There was this unspoken feeling between my friend and I that something was wrong, like there was some weird energy clinging to us. I could see in his face that he was kind of uncomfortable. Afterwards, I told him that was where I almost died, and it definitely spooked us, but we never really brought it up again. I know this isn't the scariest story, but it's one that still kind of creeps me out whenever I think about it. Am I overreacting, or would you feel the same about things? That Thing on Crouch Mesa by Ghostly 1617. It was the summer of 2012. I was 17 at the time, and like most kids my age in northern New Mexico, I spent my summers looking for something to do or get into trouble. That night, me and my best friend Sean decided to hit the Connie Mack World Series in Farmington. This was a big summer event where semi-pro youth baseball players from all over the country came to compete. We didn't go for the baseball, though. We went for the scene, the energy, and the chance of meeting some girls. It was a good night, nothing unusual, until the drive on the old highway on the way back home. I decided to take a detour on Old Crouch Mesa Highway, a desolate high desert stretch that winds through wide basins and low hills. You can see the faint outline of the La Plata and San Juan mountain ranges off in the distance to the north. But out there at night, it's pitch black. Just your headlights, the moon, and the sound of the radio. My mom used to work out there for an oil field company that reclaimed contaminated soil, so I'd been down that road hundreds of times, day and night. But no matter how many times I drove it, I always got that uneasy, heavy feeling in my gut. We turned off the highway after some time to the east, and eventually we came up on the four-way stop. Half of it somewhat paved, and the other road that intersected was nothing but dirt road for miles, the kind of intersection where you'd never see another car. Normally, I'd run right through it, but I'd been pulled over a few months earlier for doing exactly that, and I wasn't about to risk my mom finding out again. So I eased the car to a full stop. Sean sat in the passenger seat, quiet for once. He had this habit of yelling, "Watch out!" or "Stop!" whenever I was driving, just to mess with me, almost causing car crashes. But after years of his pranks, I had learned to ignore him. But that night, as I stopped at the intersection, he shouted, "Hey, what's that?" I rolled my eyes and then turned towards him to tell him to shut up. But when I looked back toward the road, there was a figure, about 20 or 30 yards ahead. Something massive crossed the road. It moved from left to right, slowly and deliberately, and kind of like a phantom. For a few seconds I froze. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. It was humanoid, but too tall, too broad. The shoulders looked like they belonged to a linebacker for the Denver Broncos. Under the moonlight, it moved with purpose, and Sean started yelling, "Go, go, go!" I slammed my foot down on the gas, my heart pounding out of my chest. A few moments later, he yelled again, "Stop! Slow down!" I slammed on the brakes, and both of us looked into the darkness. Just the illumination from the car headlights and the moon were out there. We rolled the windows down, and the air was cold and silent. And we saw it again. The thing was now off to the right, maybe 30 or 40 yards away, and it was the same hulking figure. It was facing away, half lit by the moon, and just walking into the void of darkness. The best way I could describe it, maybe imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe taller, 7 feet maybe, huge shoulders, long arms, and thick legs. I never saw its face, and I thank God I didn't that night. I'd been down that road my whole life, but I'd never seen anything like that. When I finally dropped Sean off at his house, I begged him to stay the night at my place. My mom was out of town with her boyfriend, and I didn't want to be by myself. But his mom said no, she wasn't in the mood to let him go anywhere that night after he had already been gone most of the day. So I drove home, locked every door, and lay awake all night, staring out the window, dreading if what I saw was real. I was still trying to comprehend what I saw. I know that area had farmland and had farmers. Maybe it was a horse? I was so terrified I actually called my mom, begging her to come home because I told her I'd just seen Bigfoot. That was the first time I truly believed in something out there. Something not human. But it wouldn't be the last time. Since that night, I've had 2 more encounters, one a couple of years later in northeastern New Mexico at a party on one of my friend's hundreds of acres of farmland. At that time, me, Sean, and 4 others all saw the same thing. And then later, oddly, we heard little girls laughing in the darkness. And at another time, it was in the mountains of Washington while I was in the Air Force attending survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. Each time, the feeling was the same. A sense of being watched by something powerful and not wanting to be seen. But that night back in 2012, on the empty stretch of Crouch Mesa, that's where it all started. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to Uncle Josh, truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you like what you've heard and seen and you're catching this on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I'd like to know what you thought of the stories. And if you're not a subscriber, hey, why not subscribe? Tell a friend about the channel. All that stuff does help out with the algorithms. Follow me on social media, and if you'd like to take a step further in supporting what I'm doing, find a link in the description to my Patreon page, and consider getting yourself some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew merchandise. A link to my TeePublic storefront is in the description as well. Everyone, be excellent to each other, and until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything: a ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.